Alrighty, I'm back for part 2 with the 95 Chevy Blazer 4.3 liter engine with the 4L60E transmission. We got the old fuel injection spider harness out. You can see it right here. This was not actually leaking that we know of, but it needed to be replaced anyways because those supply and return lines were chafing against there, and you can see it's not worn all the way through yet, but it's a matter of time. If you look at the end of these little poppets here, they call them, the little check balls that open and close on each one of these 6 injectors, 6 cylinders. What controls it all is, 2 wires, power and ground, and you got your regulator. So we're going to replace that whole thing. But these lines right here, this pressure line was actually leaking right there, if you remember from the first video, but we're going to do the return line since it's in a set. So in the back here, I remove these 2 fittings, 2 lines off these 2. There's a bracket back there with a T30 Torx. Well, whoever did this last time or worked on the engine, or whoever worked on it, they stripped the head out, right? And they tightened it way too tight. So now I got to get a female easy out or drill it out. It's just very frustrating. People are not paying attention to detail. To get in there, I took the distributor cap off. Just a lot easier to get my wrenches in there. This is the wire harness here. This wire needs to be replaced because it's so brittle. It just kind of fell out of there. That was a matter of time before that would break. So we got to fix that as well. And we got to replace some vacuum lines over here that are all dry rotted and cracked for different, the evap system and all that. So while I'm waiting for those tools to come here, if you look over here, we got our new parts. These are our new lines. It comes in it's like a Dorman Help is the kit here. They came with this line, the pressure line. You can look, there's a little, you guys can see that, but there's a little black O-ring on the very tip there, and then the other end threads in there. And then the return line, same way, black O-ring on the end, threads in the fitting there. Obviously these got O-rings on both of these. What holds all those in is this bracket right here with that T30 Torx that holds everything in. Here's the new spider injection. We'll replace that. Got a gasket, lower and upper set, but we're just going to do the upper set, or the upper gasket, which is this big one here. Put it all back together. Obviously clean up the plenum, clean everything up, put it all back together, and then we'll check fuel trims and make sure we're good to go, along with fuel pressure. Alrighty, we got all the old stuff out and the new stuff in. We got the new supply line and the new return line in. We got the bolt out in the back. That was a fiasco because the last guy that worked on this ended up stripping the head out. So we got the new one in. These kind of pressed in kind of hard. It's a Dorman part, so I'm not a big fan of Dorman. I actually measured it, and they're like, depending on where you measure, 3 to 6 thousandths bigger. Obviously their machine shop there's not doing the best work, but we got it to work. Hooked everything up, spider injection, fixed this wire. We checked it for leaks, which I'll show you that. But if you look up here, this is the old line. So this is where it was leaking at. You can see there are my fingers. That's where it was leaking. Those 2 chafes right there. There's a little hole in there, a little pin needle hole. That was leaking against this spider injection lines right there. You can see right there. You can see the chase. Those lines were rubbing against each other, and that's exactly why there was fuel leaking. So now we're going to hook up the power wire. So if you stay there and watch that, I'm going to prove that there's no leaks right here. So again, I'm going to battery positive with one end of the lead, and then going to the service port over here. So if you come in and zoom in, again, I'm over here. I can hear the pump on, and if you look in there, it's priming and everything. Pump's on. No leaks. Pump's on right now, so there's no leaks at all. What I really proved this is when we hooked the fuel pressure gauge up, but it's not piss and fuel like it was earlier. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and clean the manifold up, the upper plenum, put that on, bolt it on, get all hooked all the vacuum lines up. We also put a new distributor in, new rotor in, sensor in there, and then we'll run it, check fuel trims, and check fuel pressure. If you also noticed, I rerouted these injector lines for those back two cylinders on the driver's side over these lines so they won't chafe. Whoever did this job before had them under it. It's putting like an inch of pressure up on it. Well, I don't want it to chafe through again, so we rerouted them completely different, including this wire harness. That way we don't have any issues with the future with this thing chafing and causing a leak. Alright, we got the new manifold gasket back in, everything bolted down, sealed up, vacuum line's hooked up, everything's good to go, it's running awesome. If you look at the scan tool, the short-term fuel trims are positive 35, eventually goes to 38, 40%. That's a good thing, because if you remember from the first video, it was negative 35, 38, 40%. Well, the positive or negative makes it pretty much, you know, 0%, right? So that proves that we fixed it. We can get, and eventually that'll go into the long term, which is 0 now. It's correcting itself for the memory in the computer from the short and the long term. We could clear that out. We just clear off the fuel trim reset. We put everything back to 0, but this is a good way to prove that you did fix the problem. No, it is not running lean. It's correcting itself from the rich condition before. So obviously that is a fix. Everything is good to go now. We're just going to drive it around. Of course, we're going to take a look at our catalytic converters, do a pressure transducer check, see how they're doing, because obviously with all that raw fuel going down there, it probably burned them down. Alrighty, we're in the car, we're running, everything's running good. If you notice the short-term fuel trims right there, they're correcting themselves, and they're going into the long-term. Everything's working out on its own. That'll correct itself again. If you wanted to reset it, we plug the GM Tech 2 scan tool in and reset the fuel trims, but it'll do it on its own. Well, if you look at the old 2 sensor, bank 1 sensor one before the cat, should be 0 to 1 cross counts, meaning going up and down, 0 meaning lean, 1 meaning rich. So 0, 1 almost. So its cross counts are good. Before, remember, it was staying rich the whole entire time. Well, now it's not doing that because it's not putting all that fill in there. What I'm gonna do now is a wide open throttle check. So I'm gonna put it in drive, and this thing should stay rich the whole time. I'm gonna smash it to the floor. Should go rich. Gonna shift there, rich. Still rich, went down a little bit because I shifted, rich, 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 rich. All right, so what that means is it doesn't have a mass airflow, a MAP sensor. This one has a MAP sensor specifically because it's an air density vehicle. But it means it's not dirty, and it means it doesn't have a weak fuel pump. In other words, it is not running lean. The cross counts look awesome. Everything's good. It's doing its self-correction. So what I want to do now is I want to do a fuel pressure check to prove that it's not dropping down. And eventually I want to check out the catalytic converters. With all that raw fuel going in there, it could have caused, probably did cause damage to the cats. All right, we got the engine running, the fuel pressure gauge hooked up. You can see we're running about 50 psi. So I'm gonna do a snap throttle check. The fuel pressure should go up, which it does. So we're good there. What I'm gonna do now is set this gauge down. Watch the gauge there. Turn the vehicle off. And it should not bleed down. It'll bleed down a little bit, but if you watch it there, we're about 49.50. It's good. Before this thing, within like 1 to 3 seconds, it would just go all the way down to almost 0 because it was leaking. So that did fix everything. That was a good repair. The CPI system was obviously leaking from the previous video you guys saw. Now all I want to do now is check the catalytic converters and see if they're plugged up. But that is a good fix for this vehicle. 95 Chevy Blazer with a 4.3 CPI fuel system.